Good to see you again, buddies. Hey, it's Concert Buddy. This week's video, I did something I have never done in my record collecting journey. I purposely and intentionally and dedicatedly, that's a word, sold records at my local record show. So coming up, I will tell you what I learned, how I did, and all of the in-between. Cue that lever. I'll see you in a second. I've been going to my local record show for years and years and years, and I would say without fail I've missed less than a handful of shows, and that's something because my local show happens pretty frequently here in St. Louis. It's pretty much 6 times a year. It's almost an every other month kind of thing, 5 to 6 times I should say. It's probably a little too frequent because that often leads to a lot of seeing a lot of the same inventory from a lot of the same vendors. I'm reluctant to call it stale inventory, just things that haven't sold for a period of a couple shows. Now that could be good and bad because if there are some high dollar pieces that haven't sold, maybe it gives you leverage if you've seen it a couple different shows but haven't pulled that trigger just yet. Maybe it'll give you a little wiggle room to negotiate with those folks. You know, it helps to see familiar faces, make connections, yada yada. So for me, I've been a buyer, and this is the first time I was a seller. There's often been times, going back real fast to talking about seeing the same things over and over at these shows, there's been times I've actually went, I think 2 times, that I've gone and I really tried to buy things. And if I did, I might have spent less than $10 just on cheapies. It was just because there wasn't anything that really grabbed me, and that's okay. I saw Brandon, Mr. Hall of Fame, at this show, and we chatted for a while. And he really, outside of buying something for me, which I appreciate, I don't think he spent a lot of money in the show too, so it just kind of happens like that. You go to enough of these, sometimes it can be hit or miss, feast or famine, right? But I thought it would be interesting to sell at this show because, as I've alluded to in previous videos, in a couple weeks I'm going to Austin, Texas. I'm going back to the scene of the crime where I did some real damage at the Austin Record Convention last year. Decided to do it one more time this year. And knowing what I know now, I felt like, hey, I've got a lot of different records to get rid of, and I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, I felt it was a good opportunity to sell at my local show, raise some capital, just to have some money hitting the ground running going into Austin. So it was kind of a win-win situation. Plus, I thought it'd be interesting to I've never really thought about who the other buyers are when I'm at the show. There's different people from all walks of life. There's a lot of interesting characters, but I never really have paid a lot of attention to the psyche of a lot of the folks who shop at the show who I see regularly. So that was very interesting. So a lot of learnings coming up I'll talk about. But for me, this was an opportunity to unload some records. And it's records that, frankly, a lot of doubles, a lot of things. I talked about this in a video a few months ago about just being more intentional with my purchases. So it's records I picked up at various points that I really don't feel I need at this point. Not because they're not good records, but just, I'm trying to have a more dedicated and focused collection. So it was things like that. It was things that sometimes, like a lot of you, I'll pick up maybe more than one copy of a record for the intent of giving it as a gift, or the intent of maybe holding on to it for a minute and see if it appreciates, to then sell it. And then what I do generally with those sales is I'll take that money and then roll it back into a higher dollar record at my locals, or something I've been, a grail, if you will, something I've been kind of chasing after online. So again, rhyme or reason, I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this at home sell records, move records, trade records, all that kind of stuff. So this is old hat. But for me, I thought it'd just be a good opportunity for the Austin piece, but also to get rid of some records that frankly were taking up some space, but also I'm not really as active selling online, and I felt that this would be a way to get rid of, or try to get rid of, a lot of records at once. Plus, I will say that a lot of things that I collect or have collected that I brought to the show I felt would be a value add for the customers, because it's a lot of things I never see at this particular show, or shows I've been to across the country. So all that said, the poo-poo platter of rationale is what led me to selling at my local show. But the thing that really, in hindsight, I did pretty well. I sold a healthy amount of records. I'll just kind of get that out of the way. I did well. I kind of had in my mind I'd sell, between like $500 and $1,000, and I was in that range, so I was happy about that. And that's obviously not to put on my business acumen. That is not like accounting for cost of acquiring goods and inventory. I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at, I've got records that are sitting. I'm not going to listen to them, moving them. Here's what I sold. So from that perspective, did really well. And I think that this show in particular did really well because here in St. Louis, the September show is usually a pretty strong show for turnout. And so we have a spring show, I believe it's the March show, that is usually a good one too. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. People generally are clearing out records from their inventories. If they're regular sellers, people are getting rid of things in their garage or yada, yada, yada. So it has a lot of advantages for one at the end of the year and one at the beginning of the year. Plus, our local show this go around got a little publicity in a local publication. So that made for a really robust turnout. And it made for, I think, all the tables sold out. So all in all, the timing was ripe to participate in this record show. So, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you what I learned.
Look at this. Somebody come look at this.
This record show was on a Sunday. Saturday, I kind of dedicated time to prepare to price records, clean records, sleeve records, all that kind of stuff. So preparation is key. When it comes to pricing, you can use Discogs as a guide, but I also kind of in the back of my mind knew ballpark what I had paid for these records. So my thing was trying to, at worst, take a small hit on what I paid, given the title. At best, try to make a double up or more, depending on the piece, right? So not trying to like make $1 million. These shows are not for the faint of heart in terms of grails, like depending on if you're go to the Hillside show in Chicago or Austin, there's some really valuable pieces. My intent was not to bring a lot of my valuable pieces. I kind of held those back to sell on dedicated forums where it takes a dedicated or a particular buyer to buy these pieces. So I felt that it was probably a smart move not to bring those kind of heavy hitters. So pricing was super important. Cleaning, I don't know if it's because I'm just particular, but I didn't want to like show up with a bunch of dirty records. So outside of my dollar bin records, which I'll get to in a second, I felt it was important to run a lot of these records that I hadn't personally cleaned before through my ultrasonic cleaner and just make sure I was giving the best piece possible to these folks. And again, pressing defects, deep scratches that weren't advertised. That's another thing too. I tried to make like little sticky notes to kind of identify certain key things, not on every record, but if it was a first pressing or if it's a color variant or sealed or stuff like that. So cleaning the records I thought was just good practice, and that's how I'd like to be if I'm buying records from somebody. I like to know that they put a little bit of care into them and they weren't just giving me something from grandma's attic kind of thing. Another thing about preparedness is the money piece, right? If you've ever had a garage sale or you need to have money where you're selling stuff cash in hand, you got to make sure you got to get change. And I probably, in hindsight, should have just went to my bank earlier, be it Saturday morning, earlier in that previous week. I didn't. So then that left me Saturday evening scurrying to find, enough $1 bills, fives, things to break change, right? So things that you don't think about until really like, oh yeah, somebody gives me a 20 for a $7 record. 4 times am I going to have enough change to break that $13 change, whatever. So had to prepare when it comes to that. But then another piece that's really obviously now super paramount to being successful at selling at a record show is having the ability to handle digital payments. What I mean by that is like PayPal, Venmo, those kinds of things. So fortunately, from selling records before and my personal situation, I've got a Venmo account, I've got a PayPal account, I even have a PayPal business account. So then I had a couple buyers who were buying a little bit, let's say expensive, but records that weren't exactly cheap. Was able to invoice them, so they just had a paper trail just to kind of be good business. Not because I'm in any way a business here, but more just to send them here, pay me, and it worked out really well. So I would highly encourage you to go into something like this if you're thinking about doing it, having a means to take digital payments, particularly because the longer the show goes, a lot of people kind of spend their flow in cash in hand. So if you're nimble enough to be able to take a digital payment, that could be the difference between selling a record to somebody and then walking away or what have you. So, and then the other thing about preparedness was weather prevention. So it actually ended up raining the morning of the show, actually the day before and the morning. So my wife had a really good idea, and I give her credit on this. She's like, you probably should load all the records into your car the night before. Ended up, at first I was kind of dismissive. Nah, it's okay, I'll just do it morning of. But in hindsight, I'm glad I did. Took her up on her idea. There was a break in the rain Saturday, so I just moved the cart with the boxes of records, the crates of records out to my car, and I'm glad I did, because then come Sunday morning there was some rain, so I did have some towels. I had my little cart to roll things in, so I was prepared for that. So just kind of be mindful of what the forecast is going to be from a weather perspective. So that's what I considered and a way to learn in terms of preparedness.
Really, dude? Really?
All right, some other things that I learned were, one, people like cheap records. From the buyer perspective, there were a lot of people who came by my table and skipped on. I basically had 4 crates. I had a couple mixed crates, and then I had one that I clearly marked hard to find records, and then one was marked dollar records. And like Moths to a Flame, like was it Winnie the Pooh to Honey Jar? I mean, without fails, a lot of people went straight to that dollar record crate. Didn't even mess with my other crates, just went straight there, pick something, didn't pick something, and then went about their way. So if you're considering doing something like this, I think it'd be a good, doesn't have to be maybe on your table, maybe underneath your table, I don't know. Bring some dollar records that you find in thrifting, yard sailing, the records, to be honest with you, a lot of the records in my dollar bin were things that I got from a collection or two that I had found on like Facebook Marketplace. People were just giving away records, and they were local, and I just went and picked them up. And a lot of them had weather damage, so I kind of like didn't bring those. I just brought the best of the rest, or the best of the worst. But holy smokes, there was a lot of people were going through those, and I get it. I've been there. Everybody's at different stages of their collecting. Some people are just trying to get quantity over quality, and people are just trying to find sneaky gems. Hey, motives being what they are, dollar records or extremely cheap records are a magnet to at least bring people into your orbit. So I highly recommend that. So that was a big learning too.
I love hot dogs.
Another big learning is I like to think I'm a friendly guy, or at least I'm polite, right? I was raised with manners and politeness and whatever, and this is a reminder that not everybody's like that. And I went into this thinking every time somebody stopped by, at least I'd greet them. Hey, how's it going? Finding anything? Yada yada. Well, as the show continued to unfold, it became clear that some people just don't even want to talk to you. Some people are unfriendly, or some people don't like talking to strangers. Whatever the reasons are, I had to learn not to take it personally. If I said, "Hey, how's it going?" and I wouldn't even get a grunt, and then I'm sure a lot of record shop owners can appreciate this. And I try to be sensitive to it when I go record shopping. Like, you go through a bin, make sure to put the records back if they're leaning forward. So many people would just go through the bins and, wouldn't even say anything, and just leave. And so it was almost like as soon as they walked away, reach up, pull back the rack. So to you record store owners, I was in your shoes for a few hours, and I completely understand what a pain in the ass that was, because it is kind of a pain in the ass. I actually had a couple records that I was selling because they had little seam splits, and through that back and forth of the records being in the crate and not being put back. Like, I know one record in particular had like a really tiny like seam split on the top. By the end of the show, it didn't sell. The seam split had really gotten bigger, so that was kind of a bummer. But if you're looking for friendliness, and some would say cleanliness, I won't go there, but hygiene is optional apparently. And I knew that from shopping the show. Like, again, anytime you have a lot of people in a confined space, there's going to be all kinds of different people. But friendliness. If you're looking for somebody to say, "Hey, how's it going?" back to you, you're going to be holding your breath. So there's that.
I want you to be nice until it's time to not be nice.
The last thing I'll talk about is probably my favorite part of the show. Obviously, I did really well, or I did pretty well. I sold enough records to, in my mind, think it was worth the squeeze. But my favorite part, and I guess this is true of the vinyl community and doing these videos and talking to other video makers and so forth, is just the fellowship. And I think I've said it before on this channel, but it's true. There's several people in the vinyl community who make videos who are in my metro St. Louis area. and I've been fortunate enough to befriend them, to shop their stores, get to know them, especially as I've started doing these videos this year. Really developed some really cool connections and friendships and so forth. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't give some shout outs to Matt Sands. I think he was my second customer. He was my first customer. I was still loading from outside, and he went right over there, started looking. I think he left, came back, and he bought some stuff from me. So Matt's always been one of my favorite guys in the VC, even before he opened his shop in Hillsboro, and even before I started my video stuff. Great dude. So I'm gonna leave links to all these channels below. Then there are a couple guys who I hadn't really connected directly with, but just through like their videos and whatnot. And first was Robert Fithen, a really smart guy, really knows a lot about music. I saw his video, I think a couple years ago. I think it started kind of his foray or deeper foray into the vinyl community, and he did like a video about his most expensive records, which got like a crazy amount of hits, right? So Robert's a very knowledgeable guy. I believe he works in like local radio, or he has a background in that. So really, really smart guy. A lot of his videos now are just like really sarcastic, and I really enjoy that humor. Like, it really hits home for me. So he doesn't take this stuff too seriously. A lot of record collectors, spoiler alert, take this shit way too seriously. At the end of the day, it's just records. The fun is in the music. The fun is in the fellowship, like I'm talking right now. But Robert was really nice. Said hi to him. Said hi to me, whatever. Cosmic Brian. I was having a feeling I'd probably run into Brian sooner or later, and such a nice guy. Sat and talked, or not sat, but talked while he was at my table. This couldn't be a nicer guy. He told me he just I think he talked about in a recent video, he just got a new home, so he's in the process of moving, and he was like super excited to talk about it. So it's really cool to get to know somebody on a personal level, albeit briefly. And I think, if memory serves, I think he's going to be at this Pearl Jam show. So I'm sure we'll probably bump into each other there. So that was cool. And then somebody who doesn't make videos, but has been a very strong supporter of my channel and everything I'm doing here, and that's Travis. Travis is he was selling records. Like, I actually lucked out in that I knew Travis shops at Billy Hirsch's store and records, and comments on my videos. Like, Travis has been a really supportive guy, a really positive guy, and I really appreciate that. And it was great because I ran into him at Billy's shop a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Oh, I'm selling at the shop, or at the record show, so am I." Cool. Fate had it as it was. His table was literally across from mine, so in dull, customerless periods, we were able to talk. And this is a super nice guy. Travis is a really good dude. And then I can't make this video and talk about fellowship without my main man, Brandon, the OG of the VC. I'm actually probably... Spoiler alert, I think that's a good opportunity for a nice t-shirt. My wife, the t-shirt maker, I'll see if we can work something out. But Brandon, you've heard me talk about Brandon before. He's just a really top tier type of dude, not just as a collector, like his collection. A+. And I haven't even been to his record review. We're going to connect on that at some point, but just talking and watching his videos, I just know he's a top tier collector, let alone a top tier human being. Like, just a good guy, very thoughtful. Like, I just know from talking to him and the work, works at Billy's shop sometimes, and just what a great dude. But anyway, we talked. It was fantastic. It's great. I get to spend time with Brandon. We've hung out a couple times. He's a really nice guy. So all of that said, got to see some of my favorite people that I've met through the vinyl community as I'm selling records, talk to them, all that kind of stuff. So to me, yeah, selling records was great. Yeah, I was really sore from sitting Indian style for hours pricing and lifting these crates and yada yada. So I was feeling it the next day. Listen, I'm no spring chicken anymore. So there was work involved.
Shit, partner.
Hopefully this video was able to give you a little context and color into my experience. I don't know if you've ever considered selling in your local record show, but I would highly recommend at least once, just like try it. Maybe it's not for you. I don't know if I'm going to do it again. I may or may not. Depends on where the winds of change take me. But anyway, buddies, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. If you get the chance to sell at your local record show, shop your local record show, shop records anywhere you go. If you get the chance, just spin it. See you next time.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
Well, we out of time.